Hey, it's your boy, Ethan HD, here at Destiny City Comics in Tacoma, Washington. And you already know, we're packing another...
Dude, this is my YouTube show. We're not on your social media packing orders. Yeah. I'm sorry, man.
No, you're right, you're right. This is your thing. It's not my thing.
No.
I made a mistake.
Well, already know who we are.
West Coast Davengers!
Never again!
West Coast Davengers! West Coast Davengers! Ah! Ah!
Brother! Welcome back to the West Coast Avengers. My name is Dave. I'm a comic book enthusiast, a comic book expert, a comic book seller, and a voracious comic book collector and reader. This is my show about, you guessed it, comics. Please hit the like, follow, subscribe, all that jazz. Don't forget, every Wednesday, West Coast Wednesday. And then Sunday is Sunday Sit Down. I made a special announcement this week, and it's going to be more info coming soon. Mark your calendars, April 22nd and April 23rd. West Coast Avengers presents DavengerCon, an online comic book convention hosted by me for 2 days, bringing all my favorite sellers and a couple of special guests with panels and stuff like that, closing it out with Sunday Sit Down on the 23rd. So stay tuned, mark your calendars, get ready. It's going to be a blast. This is a very special episode I've wanted to bring to you for a while, but it just needed the pieces to fit and fall together in place. I'm going to take you on a little journey to Destiny City Comics right here in Tacoma. We're going to meet the owner, Ethan HD. Now, you're saying, Ethan HD? That's what your shirt says, isn't it? That's correct. He is not just the owner of a comic book store. No. He is the only comic book store owner in the U.S. that will hit you with a chair, body slam you, and possibly throw you out of a wrestling ring. That is correct. He is a pro wrestler. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring that to you right now.
West Coast Avengers!
With Destiny City Comics. So, I'm here at Destiny City Comics in beautiful, sunny,
once.
Tacoma, Washington. And we're here with Ethan HD. He's high definition. He's very high definition. There's so many pixels.
40K. 40K.
Ethan, how long have you owned this shop?
This is year 4.
Year 4, that's great. One of my favorite places to just come to. Destiny City Comics is a non-new issue store for the most part.
Yeah.
You carry new trades, you carry Cobra, stuff like that. Give me the rundown of why this store? Why?
So before we bought the store, it existed for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And for 2 of it, Steph and I, my wife, just shopped here because we love the vibe.
Mm.
And what I love most about it is the previous owner made such an emphasis on LGBT comics and comics stuff by creators of color. And so it was just cool seeing stuff off the beaten path and seeing a lot of cool zines and things.
Mm-hmm.
And it just opened up a world of comics I didn't know existed. And so 5 years in his ownership, he was burnt out and just was I'm closing up. And I emailed him the next day because people had tagged me because I would post on Instagram I Destiny City Comics again and show people what I bought. And people were messaging me and being hey, your comic shop is closing. And so I saw the Facebook post and I messaged him the next day. It was hey, just curious why you're closing and if you'd be interested in selling. And so we met a few days later, and we might have actually met the very next day. And we just talked numbers, and it was just kind of a case of burnout. We bought the store December 2019, so it was 3 months right before the pandemic. So had we not had that December Christmas money to coast on, I think we would have made it to January, and then just been and we're done. Experiment over.
What really kind of drew me to it is when I heard about your nighttime career, your alter ego.
Comic shop owner by day, spandex-clad crime fighter by night. Or pro wrestler.
Pro wrestler.
But, yeah, a lot of wrestlers are criminals, so I feel like it balances out.
That puts you in this, we talked about this category, this upper echelon of comic store owners that can also powerbomb.
Yeah.
Or give you a, DDT and then sell you a comic the next day.
I've wrestled somebody, and then they've come in the shop the next day to say what's up, and then bought something from me.
I was a pro wrestling fan since birth. I grew up as a kid in the Hogan era, but really got into wrestling in the Attitude era, NWO, Stone Cold, the WWF, WCW rivalry era. And so when I'm like, oh, wait, he's a pro wrestler? How young were you when you decided that's something that you wanted to do?
I was 7 or 8 years old. Very first thing I wanted to do when I grew up was be a Power Ranger. And then I kind of realized that that's not like a real job.
For only a couple of actors.
Yeah, because you have to be chosen by Zordon.
Yeah,
exactly. So that was all, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't a teenager yet. Right. So all I could have was attitude. And I had that in absolute spades as a teenager.
The moment, the opportunity was looking for. Oh, and he gets rolling with this combo. It's the ropes.
A friend of mine gave me a tape, and it was like Monday Night Raw, Best of Monday Night Raw, like 97 or something like that. And the first match on there is Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie in a cage match with the New Age Outlaws. And it's maybe 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just guys getting hit with trash cans. And then they cut to a clip of, like, the week prior, DX shoving the two guys that are wrestling, Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie, off the stage in a dumpster. And I was like, this is the wildest thing I've ever seen. It didn't even click that this was supposed to be a sport.
Right.
But I was like, well, I'm never missing another episode.
You can.
I'm going to do this. And then there was actually a time where I kind of convinced myself I couldn't do it. Because I'm like 5'8" now, and I was like maybe 5'5" as a teenager. And I was like, I'm too small. And then the New York independent wrestling scene, people were like leaking stuff online and like selling tapes. And I saw guys like The Amazing Red, Homicide, Loki, Brian XL, the Hit Squad, all these guys who were like my size. And I was like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm bigger than The Amazing Red. And yeah, I convinced Mom to give me a trampoline so I could practice all the flips and dives and all this dangerous stuff. And my mom was like probably thinking like, my insurance is gonna.
It's funny that you say that because when I think about, like seeing guys in ECW, those guys were all kind of like regular dudes.
Yeah.
Like you look at RVD, you look at Sandman, New Jack, like these were just Sabu, they were regular psychos.
Oh yeah, they're all lunatics.
Yeah.
Absolutely lunatics.
But they weren't Kevin Nash size. They weren't Big John Studd. They weren't Big Show.
Yeah, right. They're like normal dude height, but
Yeah.
they're just wide and yoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed such an unattainable thing. And then, seeing guys my size did it. And when I was 17, I dropped out of high school, which was not a great idea. I mean, it worked out.
It worked out.
Yeah, I felt bad because my nephew, he wanted to own a comic book store, and he assumed that I had gone to college. And I was like, my little friend, I didn't even graduate high school.
Kids, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Let's just say this. College, it's a sham.
Yeah, if you're not trying to be like a doctor,
Yeah.
skip it.
Doctor, lawyer, scientist, you can skip it. But what we know is that you graduated from the School of Hard Knocks.
True, born and raised in Tacoma.
And you take chair shots. That's the School of Hard Knocks right there.
Oh yeah, wrestling school is like one of the most grueling things. Like, there's no sport you can play that like truly prepares you for it. Like, you can be a conditioned athlete, but there's no sport where you're just getting like thrown down repeatedly, knowing you're going to get hit. Like any other sport where there's contact, you're trying to avoid getting hit. And wrestling's the only sport where you're just preparing to take the hit.
Yeah, you're going into the hit.
Yeah, Ethan's dead.
Yeah. And so it's like just a very like weird mindset of like not tensing up like when somebody's coming at you or flinching.
Yeah.
And just like taking like these blows just full on.
Wrestling for me, I had a very healthy respect. I was around these guys a lot, and I went to a lot of wrestling events and got to be really close with Jeff Hardy and Big Show, and I watched these guys on a day.
Pick up those names you dropped real quick.
Yeah.
Let me just-
Very familiar with the lifestyle too, and how much it wears on the body. They're athletes / stuntmen.
Yeah.
Like that's the best way to look at it, because when you think about stunt performers in any industry, whether it's the movies or Cirque du Soleil or something like that, have to be insanely athletic and smart. You can't just walk into there and be like, I'm going to be a wrestler, and then get hit in the face and start crying and run away.
The thing I think a lot of people don't wrap their head around is like you have to be intelligent. Like most wrestlers, like surprisingly, are very smart people because there is an element of drama to what we do. It's not just the physical aspect,
Acting.
and that's the hardest thing for people to understand. Is that like you need to know how to like read a crowd and understand like how to convey emotions, how people react to certain things. Like one thing I was trying to explain to like people that I train, because they'll be like, "Oh, I can't do that. Like that's a move a bad guy would do." Well, everything's contextual.
Yeah.
And you have to like understand like context of things, right? Because like The Rock was a good guy, and he would just full on like punch Triple H right in the dick, and nobody booed him.
No.
And to get to a certain level, you have to be like a good speaker.
Charismatic.
Yeah. Right? And be competent at speaking. That's the other thing. Not rushing your sentences, having good inflection. I was listening to a podcast, and they were interviewing Sabu. And they asked him, like, well, what made you want to get into deathmatch wrestling? And he's like, I never wanted to do barbed wire. He's like, I did one in Japan, and I was like, you know what? They're probably never going to have me do another one of these. So I'm just going to do the best that I can and try to knock it out of the park. And he did too good of a job.
Became his whole career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He never had any intentions of doing it.
Where does the love for comics start?
As a child of the 90s, like the Spider-Man animated series, X-Men the animated series, like Batman, all of those things like made me love comics. I was unfortunate enough to not have a proper comic shop in our area. But our Albertsons on the magazine rack carried comics. And so I would just grab like as many as my mom would let me, and whatever looked cool or whatever was available. I remember the thing that melted my mind was that there's 2 concurrent X-Men titles. That there was X-Men, like the Jim Lee series, and there was like Uncanny X-Men, and not realizing that they weren't the same. And so like I would like read one, and then like the next week I'd get like Uncanny instead of X-Men, and be like, well, this doesn't line up with what's going on. Missed out on so many story arcs and things like that, but like just loved the art of it, and just loved like how much personality like all these characters had, and like kind of something that drew me to wrestling is everybody looks cool, but then when you like look deeper, you're like, oh, there's like a real story here. These people are motivated by things. It's not just I'm fighting crime for the sake of fighting crime.
Right.
It's all these like little things, whether it's like how they grew up or something that affected them later.
That's the thing that drew me to comics, was like there's the escape part of it,
Yeah.
which I the same thing as wrestling. It drew me to wrestling. Is like you can just shut off the real world and enjoy characters doing something, and you're most likely going to be entertained.
One of the parallels I love of comics and wrestling is that, WWE as a television show has been going on since the 90s and even longer before that.
Yeah.
And people still tune in every week and watch it, and it's this generational thing because it changes with the times, evolves with the times, and comics are the same way.
Yeah.
These characters change and evolve, and I feel like every generation gets like these are my guys. Like right now, like young kids are gonna be like, Roman Reigns was the guy, and Kevin Owens was like the guy, and then parents go back and go like, well, Stone Cold was like our guy, and The Rock was our guy. I'm always blown away when I find out there are people who didn't know The Rock used to wrestle.
Yeah.
Or they'll try to bring it up like it's like a cool like tidbit. They'll be like, fun factoid. The Rock used to be a WWE wrestler?
And it was called Rocky Maivia.
It's like, shut the front door. The Rock was a wrestler? No. The Rock was just like, he dressed nice and cool. And honestly, I think for like a lot of young like black and brown kids, he was like the first like main event wrestler that you could like really get behind, because like before, like you might have like black wrestlers, but they're like kind of mid-tier, and like they would like win some, lose some. But to have like a guy who's like looks like you and is like he is like the world champion, and he's this top tier, like that was a market like Steve Austin could never touch. And it's no discredit to him.
No, it's just 2 different types of people.
Yeah, and I think The Rock just like nailed all those little things that Austin couldn't do, and did in such a different way, because even Hulk Hogan and those guys back in the day, like nobody wanted to dress like Hulk Hogan. I mean, I know kids that did,
Yeah.
but
Nobody wanted. I wanted to dress
Yeah.
like Macho Man, but
oh, he had the coolest outfits.
yeah.
But like The Rock, man, he'd be the reason like a tracksuit or like these nice shirts, or, like
Yeah.
a watch, and you're like that dude looks cool. Like,
Yeah.
that's somebody I would like want to grow up to be like. It's just those little things that give you like a shared experience with a character,
Mhm.
and then you like it resonates with you and it draws you in.
How long have you been in the pro wrestling circuit?
I had my first match 5 days after my 18th birthday because that's legally as soon as I could wrestle.
Ah.
And I am 35 now, and I forget exactly how many years it is, like 15, 16-ish.
Okay.
Give or take, like a pandemic
Right,
year.
because you got the blip. Yeah.
Yeah, which I never know if we're supposed to count that as like, I'm a wrestler for that year.
You
or
were.
it
I
took-
mean, you
I guess
you
I
weren't
was.
not
Yeah.
a wrestler. You didn't retire.
No?
So about
17 years.
17 years. Like, you're still wrestling. Like, I just saw you wrestle for the first time. And when somebody says, "Oh, I'm a wrestler," and and you didn't just say it. You didn't just be like, walk up to me like, "I'm a wrestler." When I found out, I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Like, that's cool." And then I'm like, when I saw you wrestle, I'm like, "Oh, he's a wrestler."
They did it! That's not the same.
I think one of the beauties of independent wrestling is you can just like throw yourself at something 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And because you have like that little bit of recuperation time where like with TV wrestling, not that they're not going hard,
Yeah.
but you have to think like, well, I still got like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So you gotta leave a little in the tank where like I really love, especially now that I really have full control over my wrestling schedule. Because before I would just wrestle all the time, every weekend,
Sure.
anywhere I could go. And now that I have the shop, I can kind of use that as an excuse. I'm like, I need to be at the store. So
Yeah, you gotta run the biz.
yeah, so I do like 2 to 3 shows a month, and I can just like go as hard as I can and not have to worry about like, oh, it's only Friday and I got a Saturday and Sunday show and like it's 6 hours to Vancouver, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Like I can really just go as hard as I can.
My head is carried.
Absolutely love it. Like I think I love wrestling more now with a reduced schedule than I did when I was wrestling full time.
I think that makes sense. I'm loving comics more now than I ever did because it's my full-time thing.
Yeah.
Even when I worked in the comic industry for a little bit, I love it more now than then.
And I think also the wrestling helps break up the monotony of being here too, like in the shop, where like those breaks and things like that kind of like rejuvenate and refresh me a little bit. Not that I'm one of those guys who's like grind culture, but I constantly have to be doing something. And like a story, like everything's just week by week, month by month, but there's no like real end goal.
Yeah.
But with wrestling, it's like, oh, I got a show in 2 weeks. Like, okay, well, I better up my cardio because like this guy runs 100 miles an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those kind of things are like, oh, I know, like in a month, like I'm gonna be wrestling a couple big boys. So like, let me put on a little size so I don't look so small. Let me do some more deadlifts and shrugs. Get my traps up to my ears.
Yeah, you
So
gotta
I
get
come-
swole.
I've always wanted to do comic book theme gear,
Yeah.
but I always feel like, why do it if that's not your persona? Other than Rey Mysterio, I think he is like the one exception because every year he does some cool thing. But like guys will just have like the Venom spider like on their tights, and it's like, what?
There was one dude, and I don't know if you remember. He passed away, but you remember Sean O'Hare?
Yeah,
He had the Venom
sleeve,
tats.
yeah.
Going to that show 2 weeks ago, I'm like, me and my buddies are like, we're not missing one now. Like,
Hell
it's,
yeah.
it's like the thing about indie wrestling. It's more. It's funny. It's more accessible. That show started, and it was 100 miles an hour. There was no storylines to follow. There was rivalries to follow, and they were super easy to pick up on real quick. It's like going to see an indie band. Like once you're in, you're in.
Yeah,
It's
fake. It is fake.
Yeah, well,
Indie music is all fake.
Yeah,
All
indie
those-
music's just as
It's
fake
just
as
they
wrestling.
pre-record it all, and then they just play in front. They're not even really strumming.
No.
No, it's all
vocals are done by one dude.
Yeah,
He's located in LA, and they just hit him up with new lyrics. And I want to talk more about the shop too. So the vibe here, when it comes to comic store vibes, is like we don't do new weekly books, but everything's kind of represented in here. And I mean that in two ways. You've got your wrestling stuff back here, but as you talked, it's friendly to all people, and that's a big thing because the majority of comics has always been geared towards white boys.
And I get it, because, like, that's who wrote it, right? And you write...
Right.
Usually, you write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, like, I'm not bitter towards that. Like, I understand that just is what it is.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But yeah, like, I really work hard to make sure everybody has at least, like, something in here that they can see themselves in or feel represented in some way. Like, I remember we first opened up, and we had gotten to reopen and everything, and this girl walked in with her mom, and the mom was like, do you have any, like, Hispanic female, like, superheroes or anything? I was like, well, we have, like, America Chavez, and, like, in, like, the volume 2 of The Trade, and that's kind of it, really. And even, like, racking my brain, it's like, there's not really, like, standalone solo series. And so they're like, okay. And, like, I was like, well, let me look into it, and I'll see what I can find. And so I ended up going online, and Caden Phoenix makes this series, A la Brava. And it's these Latina female heroes. There's 5 of them. And they all have, like, very, like, distinct personalities. And so, like, I looked it up, and he reached out. I was like, hey, like, can I just order, like, a box? And I think at the time she only had, like, 2 books out. And yeah, sure enough, that the family came back, like, maybe a couple months later and saw them, and they bought both the books. And, like, it was just cool to see that.
Yeah.
And so I'm always looking for, like, where there are, like, holes in the market. And, like, I think that's the beauty of, like, independently published comics.
Of course.
Is, like, you get people who, like, are like, I don't see myself. I'm going to make something that represents me. I kind of hope, too, that, like, there are other people like me who are going to, this is going to resonate with. And I think especially, like, that A la Brava series, like, really, like, resonated with, like, a lot of young, like, Hispanic girls. And even just kind of young girls in general.
Sure.
Just seeing, like, a superhero who's not just, oh, this weird chemical fell on her, or she's from this other planet, but just somebody who's flesh and blood and just, like, as doing the best that they can do. And, like, give them something to aspire to that's not astronomical.
Attached to King's books here, and novels, books in general, you could find a book for, about, or by anybody.
Yeah.
Literally, it's been written, or it will be written. So why not that in comics, right? And that's what you're trying to do. And the independent comic support is the biggest thing that you can do. Contacting, like, I know you told me about Copra and Michel Fife, and, like, giving people a chance to get their books out there on a level like that. You reaching out and putting that book on your shelf directly from the creator, and then having people come in and buy it is just like you're spreading it. You're letting it spread.
Other than paintings, we don't do anything on consignment.
Yeah.
I would rather just put the money directly, like, into their pocket and, like, go make more art, go make more cool things with this.
Yeah.
Like, clearly I'm already convinced that this is a cool thing, and if it doesn't sell, that's on me.
Sure.
I read the room wrong.
Yeah.
But that's not you. So you go and make more art, more things. I think it gives creators a bit more confidence.
Of course.
Because it's like, oh, I've got my book, it's in 10 shops. But if nothing sells, then you're like, oh, this sucks. Like, clearly nobody's into it. Versus, like, I've got my book in this store, and I've got some money in my pocket. Like, I'm already making money, making comics.
Well, you bring your own new tradition in here because there are no pro wrestlers that own comic stores in the Northwest. But you are kind of going with the tradition of, you know, comic stores in the Northwest that are highly focused on independent self-published stuff. I mean, Portland's got Floating World, and we've got Fantagraphics just 35 miles up the road, you know, and so it's part of the tradition of the Northwest that I've learned in the 9 years that I've lived here. It's one of the things I love about it here is that there is so much art coming out of here, whether it's music, whether it's physical art, comics, whatever. But there's so much that's coming out here that, like, it helps these people thrive on making more. It helps comic stores and bookstores thrive on bringing more people in. You know, first time I walked in here and I was like, wrestling and comics and no new books and all back issues. I'm like, hi. I know, you know, we have mutual friends that also love coming here and say the same thing. It's always a good vibe in here.
Yeah, I try to keep things positive. I always try to play fun music, not music you would hear at the grocery store.
The more that we get people involved in this scene, the more the stories are going to get better and better because they're coming from different places with different backgrounds.
Yeah, you get stories that are fresh and new and vibrant. Like, I think one of the best things that happened to the Spider-Man franchise was Miles Morales.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had told every conceivable story you could tell with Peter Parker. Like, it had all been done, every angle you could come at it, every what if. And then to have Miles Morales, where people, they understand what a Spider-Man is and does, and But now you have a whole new world to play with.
Mhm.
Like, I love that he's biracial. And not just because I'm biracial.
No,
Though,
dude, it's
there's a little
great.
bias there.
For sure.
But I love the idea of somebody who's always balancing kind of like two different heritages.
Yeah.
And I love, like, especially the Miles Morales video game. He
so
really gets to lean into his, like, Puerto Rican heritage. And it's,
Mhm.
like, just so cool to see because, like, I know kids who balance that kind of stuff. And there's tons of kids out there who do. Like, I have Korean friends who, like, will be on the phone with me talking. And then, this is not now they're on their own homes. But at the time would be, like, talking in English. And then they have to say something to their mother in Korean and come back and just flawlessly.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a whole world that, like, if you're not bilingual, which most Americans aren't,
No.
you know, you don't see represented well. Especially in movies, they're always very hesitant to put other languages because people hate subtitles. And so I feel like with a medium like comic books where you have to read, and to be able to put it in Spanish and then have the English kind of like translation underneath, I think that's such a cool thing for kids who live that experience to see somebody else not just having that same experience but thriving.
Yeah.
So many cool things they can do with Miles and they have done with Miles that you either couldn't do with Peter or have been done to death by Peter. But Miles, it's a whole new world. I think it's the best thing that happened to the Spider-Man franchise.
I think it's one of the best things to happen to comics. If the stories fucking stay the same, then I'm going to lose interest.
Yeah.
So keep creating new things with new characters, new cultures that exist, whatever it is. And you're going to keep people like me who crave new stories interested.
I think a lot of it too is just publishers understanding that, like, oh, people will read these books, right? Because it's always that self-fulfilling prophecy of, like, you know, XYZ population doesn't read comics, so we don't make comics for them.
Right.
But it's like, well, you don't make comics for them, so
they're
they
not
don't
gonna
read
read
comics. Right, but yeah, so it was that self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think finally comic book creators have, and I think kind of entertainment in general, has kind of accepted, like, oh, you can have, like, an entire cast of characters that are, you know, all of, like, one race, so whether it be, like, Asian or, you know, or Hispanic or whatever, and, like, oh, and people who aren't that race will read it.
Diversity breeds creativity, and we're finally getting right, like you said, like these meaty, really good stories. You know, the actors are great, the directors are great, the creativity's great, and it's just spreading the creativeness across. Now, I want to tie it together with, is there anything that satisfies both the comics and the wrestling fan in you?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because most wrestling comics by default are terrible. Like, I remember, like, the old WCW 90s
Oh, God,
comics,
they're terrible.
the WF comics in the 90s.
Yeah, the
they're
Valiant
all very
ones.
bad. I haven't read it yet, and I need to, because I know it's right up my alley. I love Daniel Warren Johnson, and especially, like, when him and Mike Spicer are working together. Like, I love Murder Falcon. Like,
still
Wonder
have to
Woman
read
Dead
that.
Planet is great. Is Do a Powerbomb, because it looks so cool. I love how, because I always feel like every wrestling comic book does the same thing. That wrestling to them is the 80s, and it's like, well, here's our Ultimate Warrior allegory.
Sure.
Like, every single one has, like, Ultimate Warrior allegory. You're very generic luchador, and even just flipping through it, you can tell that, like, Daniel Warren Johnson wrestling. I knew he was a wrestling fan when I read his Beta Ray Bill series, and Beta Ray Bill is doing, like, Kenny Omega's moveset. And I was like, this is such a deep cut. This is not like some casual thing, or like you Googled wrestling moves.
This is a wrestling fan.
This is Beta Ray Bill hitting a bridging German suplex. And I just know in every route, like every way, it's right up my alley. The other one, and I want to get more copies of it in, is Rubber Match. We backed the Kickstarter. It's a queer pro wrestling romance book. And I was like, that's so goddamn niche.
It is, yeah.
But so goddamn us.
It belongs in this shop.
Yeah. And so I was like, we have to get this. And we sold out of it. And I want to get more in. But obviously, you're independently published.
Of course.
If I want 10 copies, you can't just get 10 copies. You got to print hundreds and thousands or whatever. I'm so stoked they're working on another book. And I'm so stoked for it. And it's genuinely good.
That's good.
Like, that's the thing. It's like legitimately, like, and I don't read, like, a lot of romance books. I think the last one I read was, like, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which is also, I think, a very good book. The wrestling parts of it felt so spot on, and, like, you could tell that, like, they knew and loved wrestling, and then, like, the romance part, like, you wanted to see them get together, and it felt like a very fulfilling ending. It felt like I'm glad I went on this journey with them to get to the point we all know we were going to get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, Do a Powerbomb. My goal is to read it this week.
You're going to love it.
Yeah, I've been very busy. I was going to read it this morning, and then I remembered I had Lucha Libre training.
Oh, well.
So I did that this morning instead for an
take
hour and a half.
precedence.
Yeah.
I never read wrestling comics that I liked as a kid. This is a fantastic book, and it's going to be something that we do for book club at some point for Sunday Sit Down, which would love for you to be a part of whenever we do it.
Hell yeah, I'm there for it.
Cool. There's more to come. I'm going to have Ethan on Sunday Sit Down coming soon, but I wanted to just kind of talk to you about it, and get an overview of your career and this shop. And
We're open Tuesday through Sunday. Tuesday through Friday, we're open 1 to 6. And then on the weekends, we're open 11 to 6. We are at 218 St. Helens in Tacoma, Washington, in the Stadium District. We're literally 2 blocks away from Stadium High School, which is the high school from 10 Things I Hate About You.
That's right.
So if you're a bit of a film nerd like I am, you can go and get your picture in front of it, because they haven't renovated it since the movie came out.
It still looks exactly the same.
Yeah, we don't do Wednesday new releases. We're just like a big Digger's Paradise. We have just tons of open boxes for people to go through. That's relatively organized.
Yeah.
I would say if you're looking for something, you'll know where to look for it.
And they can always ask you for a recommendation because you do have a great selection of trade paperbacks and hardcovers.
That's the other thing I really pride myself on is we have for just people who are into reading and not necessarily care to collect. Yeah, we have tons of graphic novels. We're always buying used collections. We have tons of stuff that's out of print as well.
Mm-hmm. A couple of French hardcovers of Spawn here, and when you see Todd...
You buy Todd.
You
already know.
He's a Davenger.
Every month in Tacoma, I'm part of S.O.S Wrestling. It's a local Tacoma organization. They do amazing work. Right now, all their alcohol sales go towards an animal charity, which I forgot the name of.
Yeah.
But I think it's a local charity, and it's just very cool that they're making all this cool, insane wrestling happen in Tacoma, where there hasn't been wrestling for years. And they're also very just city forward and helping out local organizations. You can see me throwing people off balconies, through tables, headbutting people, doing moonsaults to the outside. All of that insane stuff that most comic shop owners can't do.
Oh, went to the well one too many times. HD has banned it.
And if you buy a comic here, he will DDT you for free right on the concrete floor. And that's the bottom line, because Ethan HD said so.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, bro.
That was a great episode. I'm so stoked. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I'll see you next week on the
Where's
Flexing in a
those
hoodie.
brother Ventures?